So how are we doing in the fight for the Second Amendment? And remember, the only reason there's a fight is because there's a whole bunch of people that were brainwashed that are convinced the Second Amendment was a document from the government issued to the people telling them what they can and can't have for arms, and the whole argument is, does the Second Amendment cover that? Unfortunately for them, the Second Amendment was actually a document from the people to the government telling them what laws they're allowed to do revolving around arms, more specifically firearms. And clearly it says shall not be infringed. Any competent person would interpret that as you are not allowed to make any laws around the Second Amendment. Now the reason I bring this video up is because I was chatting with someone and they're like, man, it's all doom and gloom. Like every time I turn around, it feels like there's some sort of law or something that comes down. A lot of this came from the pistol brace thing. Like that was a hard hit to a lot of people because a lot of people were not expecting the ATF to ever go through with it because it affected so many people. And another thing you need to remember is if you'd like to help support the channel, you can purchase one of our patches. This particular one is the Angry Avatar, which has a Velcro backing, which you can stick directly on your Cool Kid gear to show your support for the channel. I'll talk more about the patch at the end of the video. So what are we looking at for the different fights? The first one is the FRT one, and that one I get. That fight right now, how it stands in my mind, is over. What they essentially did is they gave them the El Capone treatment. So before the fight was, is it a single pull of the trigger or a single function of the trigger? That was huge, and that was a fight they could have won. However, they did some other things, and they're currently being tried in New York, and what they did is they just removed that question right off the table. So it's no longer a gun case. So now they're going against like wire fraud and a bunch of other stuff they'll wind up getting. I shouldn't say they will wind up getting. They're likely to get all their assets taken, property, houses, everything, and then spend a pile of time in prison. Exactly what they did to take down the mob. They went after him for tax fraud and just didn't worry about murder, racketeering, anything like that because they can prove and they can make tax fraud stick. And that's essentially what's happening to the FRT case. Now, one of you guys may get caught with one at some time in the future, and then you'll go through the court system and you'll ultimately bring it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will make a ruling on it, or maybe even the bump stock case will make a ruling on it and making the FRTs legal again. However, right now, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, that case is a loss. So I get why people are upset about that particular one. But let's take a look at some of the other cases. So you got 80% silencers and or Form 1 silencers. This was a big deal because forever, you could order parts because a part is not an object. A part is a part. And you can take these parts, you could do a Form 1, you could fill it out, and you could send it into the ATF, they'd approve it, and then you were able to make it. Super simple. Very super simple. All the parts you could order, totally 100% legal, no problems there. Well, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that, the ATF did a 180, and they're like, nope, the parts are now a silencer because you're showing constructive intent. So it was like the chicken and the egg situation. Do you get the Form 1 first, because still you're showing intent there, or do you get the parts first? What exactly do you have to do? And they went and raided a whole bunch of companies and arrested owners, and people got sentenced over this. Very, very dark. However, the biggest thing is it wasn't really challenged. The people that I know of that were arrested, they either took out on plea bargains or something like that, so that's where it stopped. There was no point in going any farther with it. I believe at some point in the future, maybe even, more an immediate future, especially around Chevron deference, which happened this year, or actually would have been last. Man, time flies when you get old. You ever realize that? Like, time really flies. Anyways, the EPA case with Chevron deference, I believe at some point, they will expand on top of that and tell the ATF, no, you can only enforce the law. You can't make up new laws. You can't decide the definition of a silencer is now different, and so we're going to go enforce this. I believe that will ultimately happen. And when that happens, yes, the parts will be legal again. So yeah, they got a kind of victory in that category, but I think it's only temporary. I think at some point in time, silencers, specifically 80% or Form 1 silencers, whatever you want to call it, will be 100% legal because it either is or is not a silencer. Can I screw this on the end of my firearm? Will it reduce the noise level? That is the question. If it can, it's a silencer. If it's not, it's what? Parts? Scrap metal? What's the difference between the aluminum ore you take out of the ground and a complete silencer? Where is that line? And I believe they push so far back to where it's just parts that it will ultimately get shut down. And then you have the Texas-made silencers. That's going through the court system right now. As we speak, Texas is like, no, you have no authority here. You only have authority if it's crossing state lines. That's your authority. You have no authority inside this state. If we tell our residents they can make silencers, then they can make silencers because we have the authority, not you. And as that goes up through the court system, I believe that there's a very good chance that silencers will either be removed off the NFA or they will have to back down and be like, okay, if you make it in your state and you keep it in your state, it's not federally regulated. Because remember, this isn't an individual, this isn't a manufacturing company, this isn't some gun rights group pushing this. This is the state of Texas going after the government. That's hard to ignore. When the state of something is going after the government, typically, I shouldn't say typically, in my head, I would assume that the Supreme Court would take that because that's obviously a problem. If you have a state saying something and the government's like, no, you're wrong, the only people that can handle it at that point is the Supreme Court. And let's be real, shall not be infringed. 0 gun laws. And we've had several cases that have went up to the Supreme Court and they have said whether it is or is not a firearm, if it can be used for defense or attached on a firearm in any way, shape, and form, it is in fact covered by the Second Amendment. So I believe the ATF bit off more than they could chew with that, and that's ultimately going to come right back around, bite them in the ass, and probably get silencers taken off the NFA. Then we got PMFs, privately manufactured firearms, otherwise known as 80% lowers. They tried to push a ruling on that. They already have a TRO on that. They can't enforce the ruling, at least not in certain areas and companies. The details are a little bit confusing. The point is, the judges are already signing with us. Already. I believe that was also another case where they bit off more than they could chew. They took a huge chunk, and now everybody's like, you can't do that. Including the federal judges. What are the positive outcomes that could come from this? This may wind up going all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court may be like, these receivers you're trying to, these parts, these pieces of metal you're trying to regulate, first off, are not a receiver. Second of all, they are for firearms that are in common usage. We have already ruled anything in common usage is protected by the Second Amendment. Maybe the problem is we shouldn't have a firearm registry, which they've already said that we can't. That's federally illegal. What is the serial number for? Tracking a firearm. Why would you want to track a firearm? To register a firearm. Maybe it'll make it all the way up to the Supreme Court and they'll be like, there's no point in a 4473. That's ridiculous. The Hughes Amendment, gone. It's a clear violation of the Second Amendment, gone. No more background checks, no more needs for serial numbers. That's obviously the best case scenario. I mean, will we get something in between? Clearly, well, in my opinion, clearly they're not going to let the ATF get away with regulating something that's not even a firearm yet. It's not a firearm yet. It's still just a piece of metal. It has to hit a certain point. Ideally, it can go bang when you install a trigger and a fire control and all that stuff. So if it's not at that point, it's not a firearm. Therefore, they have no business regulating it in the first place. So best case scenario, Hughes Amendment's gone. Worst case scenario, nothing happens. I believe we'll either get something in between the best and the worst case, somewhere in between, which will be beneficial to us, or maybe it'll go as far as like the best case scenario and the Hughes Amendment's gone. No more 4473s. Who knows? like I said, it's all on your perspective of how you're looking at these particular cases. Yes, they're throwing a lot of garbage out there right now, but that's all it is. Garbage. Dirty tricks. Cheap tricks. It's like scams almost. Yeah, it looks great on the surface, but once you open that bad boy up, spread those cheeks open and go in there with a flashlight, you're like, this is really broken. And anyone can see it. It's not like kind of broken, like I'm kind of going to let this slide because for whatever reason. No, like it's really broken. Then we got pistol braces. Again, I understand why people are upset about all that. I don't see that standing. I mean, there's already like 3 lawsuits against that. Will every single lawsuit fail? Probably not. It's possible the judge might be like, okay, that was always an SPR. Pistol braces were just an excuse to make an illegal SPR. That's possible. I get that. But that's one outcome that would be favorable for the ATF. There are so many different outcomes where it's not. Like, the next slightly positive outcome is you can't regulate an accessory. If the Supreme Court openly says they can't regulate an accessory, think about how drastic the laws would change. Because now, what's the next accessory that would go on there? Suppressors. It's a lose-lose. They have one shot at getting a positive income. All the rest of them are incredibly bad. So let's say the judge is like, you can't regulate an accessory that's not a firearm. You have no control over that. Okay, so then they have no control if I want to put a stock on my pistol. If I want to put a silencer on my pistol. Think of all the accessories that would just free up and just open the floodgates. The next option is it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court and they're like, well, we ruled that pistols are protected by the Second Amendment because they're in common use. And we ruled that rifles are protected by the Second Amendment because they're in common use. Why does it make any sense for the middle between those two to be regulated? We got common use, and then we got this middle one that we're allowing you to federally regulate, keep a registry of, charge people a tax. And remember, you can't tax a right. That's already been ruled by the Supreme Court. Why are SPRs on the NFA? Gone. Will that happen? I'd like to see it happen. It's possible it will happen. Will it? I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out. Again, the ATF bit off way more than they could chew. Now the next one, New York CCW. The Supreme Court was pretty damn clear. Your CCW laws are unconstitutional. And there's a bunch of states that do something, well, I shouldn't say a bunch of states. You got like California, Illinois, stuff like that where they're highly restrictive on CCW. Then New York went and spit in their face. It was like, no, we're not going to follow your rules. There's only one likely outcome because they already said their position. That CCW should not be regulated. The next possible step to just wipe all that away is nationwide CCW. So either like your CCW card from your state will be good nationwide or there will be no restrictions on concealed carry whatsoever. Because why is there? Why is there a restriction on how I can carry my firearm outside of the house? Makes no sense whatsoever. The dumbest thing I've ever heard. So again, yeah, the lawmakers did something really stupid. I think they tried to bite off more than they could chew, and that's going to come around and bite them. Then you got California openly fighting with the federal court. 4 Box's Diner just did a great video on Gavin Newsom's like calling the judge out and being a total dick. What's likely to happen after that? Well, you got the magazine ban, the assault rifle ban, CCW restrictions. Chances are, because this federal judge is like, you want to talk to me like that? Unconstitutional, unconstitutional, unconstitutional. California may wind up being the freest gun state in all 50 states when all this is over with. Like, that's something you just don't do. So that's my opinion. Yeah, things don't look the best right now. Yeah, there's a lot of stupid laws coming down the pipe. Are any of them realistically going to stick? Probably not. Are any of them going to net us something really positive? At least one of these will. No matter what, we're going to get something positive out of all of this. And that's my opinion. I'm of the opinion, don't worry about it right now. Yeah, it doesn't look that good, but they are getting smashed on like so many different fronts right now. I foresee that continuing, at least for the immediate future. You know, maybe the next generation will have a different opinion about firearms, but at least our generation, no. Now with the lockdowns and everything and how many new gun owners there are, all of a sudden the need for a gun was put right up in front of everybody's face to where they couldn't ignore it. And that's what it all comes down to. What is the public opinion? What would the public be willing to let us get away with? And I think what it was even 3 years ago compared to today is a night and day difference. We'll have to see how it all plays out. Now, back to the new merchandise on my store. So the reason I call this the Angry Avatar is because it looks angry. There are limitations on what you can do with PVC because you have to go in there and you have to make a mold. The mold can only be so detailed for something so small. When it came out, because of the limitations, dude looks pissed. Like, just straight up pissed. So I didn't wind up getting a full order of these because I'm like, that's not what I wanted to sell my community, because I wanted to give them the actual avatar I use. And that's the avatar, like if somebody tries talking to you on like some other social media platform claiming to be me, they need to be using, that's worded wrong. If somebody's trying to talk to you on a different social media platform, I don't care what it is, Telegram or whatever, and this is not the avatar they're using, it's probably not me. I specifically use this avatar on the other one so it looks different, because typically the scammers, what they'll do is they'll screenshot what I have for my channel, and then they'll use that avatar on like Telegram or something and try to trick you into giving them your bank account number. Not cool at all. So anyways, this is the avatar I use, but it's not the exact same as the one that's actually on those platforms, so I only got a partial order, but as soon as I seen it, I laughed so hard I had to get some of them. So this is only a 5th order. Like normally I order X amount, well this I only ordered 1/5 of that amount. So they're very limited. Obviously everything's a one-time run, but I had to bring this to you because it makes me laugh. And if it makes me laugh, it's got to make you guys laugh. I mean, just look at this guy. He looks pissed. Looks like Speed Racer or something. Anyways, I finally got these in, and then I got the Only Tactical Fans. Let me open this up. The Only Tactical Fans Freedom Star. So what we got here is we got the Only Tactical Fans banner, which is OTF, and we got the Freedom Star in the background, and then we have 2 of the best battle rifles ever made, the Scar 17. Everybody knows that. Scar 17, what's the best battle rifle ever made? Scar 17. We got 2 of them, not 1, but 2 behind the Freedom Star, which how cool is that? These are also a limited run. These can't be done in PVC because there's too much detail, so these will only be sold and embroidered. Anyway, appreciate you guys watching my channel. Again, if you'd like to support me directly, the best way to do that is shop at OnlyTacticalFans.com. Always, if you'd like, you could always donate on PayPal. I have affiliate links in the description down below just by clicking on those particular links. Even if you don't purchase what that link is for, just clicking on it, doing the Amazon shopping you were already going to do anyway. You were already going to do it. And a little kickback for it because you came there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.